The sun had not yet risen. In the darkness, only the flickering lights of torches from the Islamic army surrounding the fortress could be seen. The walls of Khaybar, these stone barriers that had protected Arabia's largest Jewish tribes for centuries, now waited silently. But this was the silence before the storm. Inside the fortress, the defenders were awake. Outside, 1,400 Muslim warriors were preparing for one of history's most strategic sieges. This wasn't just about land. This was the time to settle accounts with years of conspiracies against Medina. In the darkness, horses neighed, armor clinked, and days that would change the course of Islamic history were about to begin. Khaybar, the most fortified stronghold of the Arabian Peninsula, Arabia's economic powerhouse, and one of the greatest threats facing Islam. So, what happened before this fortress? How did the Muslims capture this seemingly unconquerable castle? And how did this victory change the course of history? Here are all the unknowns of the siege of Khaybar. The 7th year of Hijrah, 628 AD. Prophet Muhammad and the Muslims had repelled the great siege of Meccan polytheists a year earlier in the Battle of the Trench. But that battle had made one thing clear. Mecca wasn't the Medinans' only enemy. The real danger was from within. Khaybar was a strategic region located in a fertile valley about 150 kilometers north of Medina. This wasn't just a settlement, it was also the crossroads of Arabia's trade routes. Date palm groves, grain fields, abundant water sources. Khaybar was an economic power center, and the owners of this power were the most populous and organized Jewish tribes in the region, the Banu Nadir, followers of Banu Qurayza. Tribes expelled or punished from Medina had reorganized in Khaybar. They hadn't just reorganized, they had formed alliances with Mecca, incited Arab tribes in the region against Muslims, and orchestrated conspiracies. Prophet Muhammad was aware of this threat. The Treaty of Hudaybiyah had closed the Mecca front for 10 years. Now, it was time to secure Medina's northern flank. Without Khaybar falling, Medina would never be safe. In the month of Muharram, in the 7th year of Hijrah, the decision was made. An expedition would be mounted to Khaybar, but this wouldn't be easy. There were 8 separate fortresses in Khaybar, each independent from the others, surrounded by strong walls filled with provisions. Their defenders were experienced warriors. Moreover, the region's geography offered no advantage to attackers. But Prophet Muhammad was ready. 1,400 warriors, 100 cavalry, weapons, supplies, determination, and most importantly, the idea of justice. This expedition was to end oppression. It was a stand against conspiracies, treachery, and plans to collapse Medina from within. When the army left Medina, Khaybar's residents were unaware, because Prophet Muhammad had chosen a different route, to surprise the enemy, to catch them unprepared. The Islamic army's greatest advantage was that news hadn't reached the enemy. At night, the Islamic army descended into the Khaybar Valley. They advanced silently in the darkness. When morning came and the people of Khaybar went out to work their fields, what did they see? Thousands of warriors had completely surrounded the fortress. This was a moment of panic. Women carried children into the fortresses. Men took up their weapons. Khaybar's commanders quickly gathered. Before them lay a difficult decision. Would they surrender or would they resist to the end? They decided to resist because they had strength. 8 fortresses, thousands of warriors, abundant supplies. Moreover, geography was on their side. The fortresses had been built atop rocky hills, high walls, narrow passages, defensive towers. Khaybar was a settlement designed against attack. Prophet Muhammad organized the army. The strategy was clear. The fortresses would be taken one by one. They would start with the weakest ones first, then target the central fortresses. But this wouldn't be easy. The first target was Fort Naim. This was Khaybar's outer defensive line. If Naim fell, reaching the other fortresses inside would become easier. Muslim warriors took their positions, archers took their places, cavalry protected the flanks. Prophet Muhammad distributed command to Ali, Abu Bakr, and other commanders. Inside the fortress, tension was at its peak. Defenders crowded the walls, arrows nocked, catapults ready. They were waiting. They knew that the first clash would determine the course of the siege. And that moment came. Prophet Muhammad gave the order, "In the name of Allah, advance." The Islamic army moved into action. The first wave toward Fort Naim had begun. A rain of arrows began. Khaybar's defenders opened fire from the walls. Arrows whistled through the air. Stones flew from catapults. In the first moments, Muslim ranks hesitated. Approaching the fortress was quite risky. But they didn't retreat. Ali and the commanders tightened the ranks. Shields joined together. Archers returned fire. The fighting intensified. On the first day, an assault was launched on Fort Naim, but no result was achieved. The walls were too high. The defenders were determined. When night fell, the Muslim army withdrew. The first day's toll was heavy. There were casualties, but the fortress still stood. Prophet Muhammad reviewed the strategy with his commanders at the night meeting. It had become clear that this siege would take longer than expected. Patience, discipline, and tactics would be needed. The next day, a different approach was tried. Instead of directly storming the fortress, the siege was tightened. Water routes were cut off. Supply lines were blocked. The aim was to wear down the defenders, to break their morale. Days passed. Fort Naim was resisting but growing weary. Supplies inside began to dwindle. Cracks formed among the defenders. Some considered surrendering, others insisted on fighting to the end. After 10 days, Fort Naim fell. The defenders surrendered. The first victory had been won. But the real challenge lay ahead, because now the target was Khaybar's central fortresses. And the strongest of these was the famous Fort Al-Qamus. Al-Qamus was the heart of Khaybar. This was the richest, most fortified, most strategic fortress. Its commander, Marhab, was one of the most renowned warriors of the Arabian Peninsula. A giant of a man, wearing 2 suits of armor, a massive helmet on his head. With his mace, he could split enemy ranks with a single blow. Marhab was legendary, and this legend made capturing Al-Qamus nearly impossible. Prophet Muhammad made a special plan for Al-Qamus. He would give the banner to the bravest commander. On the first day, the banner was given to Abu Bakr. The assault began, but failed. The fortress was too strong. The defensive line couldn't be breached. On the second day, the banner was given to Umar. He too attacked with all his courage and strength. But again no result was achieved. Al-Qamus stood firm. When night fell, Prophet Muhammad announced good news. "Tomorrow I will give the banner to someone through whom Allah will grant victory to this fortress. That person loves Allah and His Messenger, and Allah and His Messenger love him." The entire army was filled with curiosity. Who would this person be? When morning came, Prophet Muhammad called for Ali. Ali was ill that day. His eyes were in pain. Prophet Muhammad applied his saliva to his eyes and prayed. Ali's pain disappeared, and he handed him the banner. "O Ali, go and invite them to Islam. If Allah guides one person through you, it is better for you than red camels." Ali took the banner. He mounted his horse and advanced toward Fort Al-Qamus. When he reached the fortress, he paused. He shouted loudly, "O people of Khaybar, I am Ali ibn Abi Talib. I have come to invite you to Islam. Surrender, let no blood be shed." The fortress gate opened, and Marhab emerged, a giant of a man, wearing 2 suits of armor, his mace in hand. The warriors around him shrank back. Marhab's fame had intimidated the ranks. "I am Marhab," he roared. "My mother raised me to be a hero renowned by the name Marhab. I am fully equipped with my weapons." Ali didn't step back, drew his sword, and walked forward. "I am Ali. My mother raised me to be a lion renowned by the name Haidar. I weigh my enemies with my sword." The 2 heroes faced each other. Marhab swung his mace. The blow was terrible. But Ali moved nimbly. The blow missed, and Ali's sword descended like lightning. A single strike. It split Marhab's armor, his helmet, and embedded in his skull. The legendary warrior collapsed to the ground. A shockwave spread through the fortress. Marhab had been killed. The legend had fallen. The defenders' morale instantly collapsed. Ali hadn't hesitated. He rushed toward the fortress, but the gate was closed. A massive gate. Normally it took 10 men to open it. Ali ripped that gate from its hinges with one hand and hurled it aside. Muslim warriors witnessed this miracle. Ali would later say, "Allah gave me that strength in that moment. I couldn't have done it with my own power." The gate was open. The Islamic army surged inside. Fort Al-Qamus was falling. The defenders surrendered. The heart of Khaybar had been conquered. But the war wasn't over. There were still other fortresses. Al-Zubair, Al-Wati, Sulalim. They were targeted one by one. But the fall of Al-Qamus had broken their morale. The other fortresses also surrendered one after another. The siege of Khaybar lasted 15 days. 15 days of fighting, siege, strategic moves. And finally, Khaybar came under the control of the Islamic State. When the gates of the last fortress opened, silence fell over the Khaybar Valley. The neighing of horses stopped. Weapons were lowered. Dust slowly settled to the ground. The Muslim warriors were exhausted but filled with victory. The struggle they had waged for 15 days had paid off. All the fortresses of Khaybar had been captured. Islamic banners now flew over the fortress walls. Date palm groves, grain fields, water sources, all were under Muslim control. But what was truly important was that bloodshed had been kept to a minimum. Prophet Muhammad had shown strategic patience throughout the siege. Instead of unnecessary attacks, he had used siege tactics, worn down the enemy, and secured surrender. Most of Khaybar's population had survived. As the sun set, Prophet Muhammad addressed the army. A prayer of thanks was offered. Praise was given to Allah. This victory wasn't just a military victory. Medina's security had been ensured. The northern borders of the Islamic State had been secured. And from now on, Muslims could focus on greater goals. After the conquest of Khaybar, Prophet Muhammad made a very noteworthy decision. He made a treaty with the people of Khaybar. The lands would belong to the Islamic State, but the people could continue living there and working the land. In return, they would pay half the produce as tax. This decision was one of the most humane conquest treaties in history. The people of Khaybar weren't exiled or massacred. On the contrary, they became a productive part of Islamic society. This understanding of justice would become one of the fundamental principles of Islamic conquests in the following years. Khaybar's economic wealth enabled Medina to gain strength. Now Muslims were economically more comfortable, militarily more powerful. This victory would lay the groundwork for the conquest of Mecca 2 years later. But Khaybar's importance wasn't just strategic, it was also a major spiritual turning point. The Islamic army had captured a seemingly unconquerable fortress. Ali's heroism had become a legend that would be told for centuries. The Muslims' determination, patience, strategic intelligence, all had manifested themselves at Khaybar. And perhaps the most important lesson was this: power lies not only in swords, but in justice as well. Prophet Muhammad conquered Khaybar victoriously, but afterward also established justice. He showed humanity even to the enemy. This attitude was the most powerful weapon in the spread of Islam. The siege of Khaybar is one of history's turning points. It is critical in many aspects, from Medina's security to the conquest of Mecca, from the economic foundations of Islamic civilization to its spiritual renaissance. And today, 1400 years later, the lessons of Khaybar still remain valid. Patience, strategy, justice, and mercy. These are what Khaybar teaches us. If this story touched your heart, stay with us by subscribing. See you in the next video. May Allah be with you.